so he became a prince. At first they danced all weekend, toasted each other in the morning with coffee, with champagne at night, and always with kisses. Perhaps it was in bed, after the first year had ground around, she noticed he had become cold with her. She had to sleep with a heating pad and down comforter. His manner grew increasingly chilly and damp when she entered a room. He spent his time in water sports, hydroponics, working on his insect collection. Then in the third year, when she said to him one day, "My dearest, are you taking your vitamins daily? You look quite green," he leapt away from her. Finally, on their 5th anniversary, she confronted him. "My precious, don't you love me any more?" He replied, "Ribbit, ribbit." Though courtship turns frogs into princes, marriage turns them quietly back.
For a truly cynical view of relationships between the sexes, Intimates by D.H. Lawrence takes some beating. In this savagely funny poem, he takes the view that falling in love is essentially a narcissistic activity. So I advise viewers who like to keep their romantic illusions intact to, as they say, look away now.
"Don't you care for my love?" she said bitterly. I handed her the mirror and said, "Please address these questions to the proper person. Please make all requests to headquarters. In all matters of emotional importance, please approach the supreme authority direct." So I handed her the mirror. And she would have broken it over my head, but she caught a sight of her own reflection, and that held her spellbound for 2 seconds, while I fled.
But even when you know it's over, it's so tempting to give it one more go. A point that is just as true now as it was in the 17th century, when Michael Drayton wrote this long goodbye.
Since there's no help, come, let us kiss and part. Nay, I have done. You get no more of me. I am glad. Yeah, glad with all my heart that thus, so cleanly, I myself can free. Shake hands forever, cancel all our vows, and when we meet at any time again, be it not seen in either of our brows that we one jot of former love retain. Now at the last gasp of love's latest breath, when his pulse failing, passion speechless lies, when faith is kneeling by his bed of death, and innocence is closing up his eyes. Now if thou wouldst, when all have given him over, from death to life thou mightst him yet recover.
If your marriage is losing its lustre, you could embrace serial monogamy, like this tailor, or you could go the conventional and cheaper route and have an affair. I like this very clever poem by the Irish poet Maura Donaldson about an unfaithful couple. I had to read it twice before I realised why the title, Infidelities, is in the plural.
After he'd gone, she found money in the sheets, fallen when he pulled his trousers off. Gathering the coins into a small pile, she set them on the window ledge. They sat, gathering dust, guilt, until one day her husband scooped them into his pocket. Small change for a call he couldn't make from the house.
Infidelity is always complicated. It's never just about sex.
Thinking we were safe. Insanity. We went in to make love. All the same, idiot to trust the little hotel bedroom. Then, in the gloom, and who does not know that pair of shutters with the awkward hook on them, all screeching whispers? Very well then, in the gloom, we set about acquiring one another. Urgently. But on a temporary basis. Only as guests, just guests of one another's senses. Idiots. To feel so safe, you hold back nothing. Because the bed of cold, electric linen happens to be illicit. To make love as well as that is ruinous. Londoner, Parisian, someone should have warned us that without permanent intentions, you have absolutely no protection. If the act is clean, authentic, sumptuous, the concurring deep love of the heart follows the naked work. Profoundly moved by it.
Most people tumble into affairs looking for the excitement that's missing from their marriages. But as the poet Vernon Scannell makes clear in this next poem, adultery too can be predictable and boring. He calls the poem Taken in Adultery in a deliberate reference to the passage in the New Testament when Jesus, confronted by an unfaithful woman, says, "He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone." Scannell's take on this is a modern one. What he's saying is, don't be judgmental. Adultery contains its own punishment.
Shadowed by shades and spied upon by glass, their search for privacy conducts them here, with an irony that neither notices, to a public house, the wrong time of year for outdoor games, where over gin and tonic, best bitter and potato crisps, they talk, without much zest, almost laconic, flipping an occasional remark. Would you guess that they were lovers, this dull pair? The answer, I suppose, is yes, you would, despite her spectacles and faded hair, and his worn look of being someone's dad. You know that they're having an affair, and neither find it doing them much good. Presumably, in one another's eyes, they must look different from what we see, desirable in some way. Otherwise, they'd hardly choose to come here furtively and mutter their bleak needs above the mess of fag ends, crumpled cellophane and crumbs, their love feasts litter. Though they might profess to find great joy together, all that comes across to us is tiredness, melancholy. When they are silent, each seems listening. There must be many voices in the air. Reproaches, accusations, suffering. That no amount of passion keeps elsewhere. Imperatives that brought them to this room, stiff from the car's back seat, lose urgency. They start to wonder who's betraying whom, how it will end, and how did it begin. The woman taken in adultery, and the man who feels he too was taken in.
When it's really over, the most important thing to hang on to is not the teaspoons, but your dignity. The American poet Maya Angelou, whose extraordinary life encompasses more passion and heartbreak than most of us can even imagine, makes a very convincing case for hiding the pain.
Today, you threaten to leave me. I hold curses in my mouth which could flood your path, see your bottomless chasms in your road. I keep behind my lips. Invectives capable of tearing the septum from your nostrils and the skin from your back. Tears, copious as a spring rain, are checked in ducts, and screams are crowded in a corner of my throat. You are leaving. Aloud, I say. I'll help you pack, but it's getting late. I have to hurry or miss my date. When I return, I know you'll be gone. Do drop a line or telephone.
But it doesn't always have to end in tears.
The day he moved out was terrible. That evening, she went through hell. His absence wasn't a problem, but the corkscrew had gone as well.
Of course, it's not over till it's over. We all know couples like the one in James Fenton's witty parody of Auld Lang Syne, who meet not to bury the hatchet, but to pick at the scab forming over their relationship until it bleeds.
That's sort out things.
So you don't want to go? Mm-hmm. Do you think I want to come here and nag at you all the time?
No purpose, right?
Some people are like that. They split up and then they think, hey, maybe we haven't hurt each other to the uttermost. Let's meet up and have a drink. Let's go over it all again. Let's rake over the dirt. Let me pick that scab of yours. Does it hurt? Let's go over what went wrong. How and why and when. Let's go over what went wrong. Again and again. We hurt each other badly once. We said a lot of nasty stuff. But lately I've been thinking how I didn't hurt you enough. Maybe there's more where that came from. Something more malign. Let me damage you again for the sake of Auld Lang Syne. Yes, let me see you bleed again for the sake of Auld Lang Syne.
I love this clever and vicious revenge poem by the Australian Vicky Raymond.
5 potent curses I send. The first, love, which frequently drives men to suffer uncouth hair transplants. The second, riches, bringing in their train the envy of friends, expressed in these words. It's all right for some. My third curse is fame. May you become sport for reporters. May the dull quote you. May cranks think they are you. My fourth, contentment. Hugging you, white grub in a fat cocoon that the cries of men cannot penetrate. And last, a long life. May you live to be called the grand old man. Smiling at you, may the young sprain their jaws.
Rupert Brooke is best known for his patriotic, slightly schmaltzy poem, The Soldier, the one that begins, "If I should die, think only this of me." But it's clear from his poem Jealousy that he knew all about pain and suffering before he went to war. It's an uncommonly vicious poem. But who does he hate the most? The woman, her new lover, or does he reserve the greatest loathing for himself?
When I see you, who are so wise and cool, gazing with silly sickness on that fool you've given your love to, Your adoring hands touch his so intimately that each understands I know most hidden things. And when I know your holiest dreams yield to that stupid bow of his red lips, and that empty grace of his strong legs and arms, that rosy face has beaten your heart to such a flame of love that you've given him every touch and move, wrinkle and secret of you all your life. Oh, then I know I'm waiting, lover-wife, for the great time when love is at a close, when all its fruits to watch the thickening nose and sweaty neck and dulling face and eye that are yours, and you most surely till you die, day after day, you'll sit with him and note the greasier tie and dingy wrinkling coat as prettiness turns to pomp and strength to fat, and love, love, love to habit.
No one faces harsher scrutiny than your ex's new squeeze.
You ask what I think of your new acquisition. And since we are now to be friends, I'll strive to the full to cement my position with honesty. Dear, it depends. It depends upon taste, which must not be disputed. For which of us does understand why some like their furnishings pallid and muted, their cookery wholesome but bland? There isn't a law that a face should have features, it's just that they generally do. God couldn't give colour to all of his creatures and only gave wit to a few. I'm sure she has qualities much underrated that compensate amply for this, along with a charm that is so understated it's easy for people to miss. And if there are some who choose clothing to flatter what beauties they think they possess, when what's underneath has no shape, does it matter if there is no shape to the dress? It's not that I think she is boring, precisely. That isn't the word I would choose. I know there are men who like girls who talk nicely and always wear sensible shoes. It's not that I think she is vapid and silly. It's not that her voice makes me wince. But chili con carne without any chili is only a plateful of mince.
A plateful of mince, indeed. I love that ending. It's so splendidly catty. But if you want a more mature approach, why not try this poem by the young British poet Sophie Hannah? Love doesn't have to end in tears after all. Why not take her advice and throw a party instead?
The end of love should be a big event. It should involve the hiring of a hall. Why the hell not? It happens to us all. Why should it pass without acknowledgement? Suits should be dry cleaned. Invitations sent. Whatever form it takes, a tiff, a brawl, the end of love should be a big event. It should involve the hiring of a hall. Better than the unquestioning descent into the trap of silence, than the crawl from visible to hidden, door to wall. Get the announcement made, the money spent. The end of love should be a big event. It should involve the hiring of a hall.
The American poet Edna St. Vincent Millay packed an awful lot of love and loss with men and women into her lifetime. So it's to her poems I always turn on those mercifully few occasions when I find myself heartbroken, like this tragic sonnet. I always find it strangely reassuring, I suppose because it makes me feel that my suffering is not unique.
Time does not bring relief. You all have lied who told me time would ease me of my pain. I miss him in the weeping of the rain. I want him at the shrinking of the tide. The old snows melt from every mountainside, and last year's leaves are smoke in every lane. But last year's bitter loving must remain heaped on my heart, and my old thoughts abide. There are 100 places where I fear to go, so with his memory they brim. And entering, with relief, some quiet place, where never fell his foot or shone his face, I say, there is no memory of him here. And so stand stricken. So remembering him.
Nothing is harder to bear at the end of the affair than the memory of past happiness.
Like the touch of rain she was on a man's flesh and hair and eyes, when the joy of walking thus has taken him by surprise. With the love of the storm he burns, he sings, he laughs, well I know how, but forgets when he returns, as I shall not forget her go now. Those two words shut a door between me and the blessed rain that was never shut before and will not open again.
It doesn't matter how well a relationship ends. In my experience, there's always a moment when you feel assaulted by a sudden sense of loss. Here are two small poems written at either end of the 20th century about the aftermath of love. But don't be deceived by their apparent simplicity. Underneath those cool words, you can hear the sound of a heart breaking.
Sometimes I have wanted to throw you off like a heavy coat. Sometimes I have said you will not let me breathe or move. But now that I am free to choose light clothes or none at all, I feel the cold, and all the time I think how warm it used to be.
I so liked spring last year, because you were here. The thrushes, too. Because it was these you so liked to hear. I so liked you. This year's a different thing. I'll not think of you. But I like the spring, because it is simply spring, as the thrushes do.
This last poem, The Darning Letters, it's about something we've probably all experienced. I certainly have. It's when you come across a bundle of mementos of an old love that you just couldn't bring yourself to throw away at the time. It's always a bittersweet moment. As the poet Caroline Duffy so pungently puts it, you can feel your heart thudding like a spade on buried bones.
Some keep them in shoe boxes away from the light. Sore memories blinking as the lid lifts, their own recklessness written all over them. My own. Private jokes, no longer comprehended, pull their punchlines, fall flat in the gaps between endearments. What are you wearing? Don't ever change. They start with darling, end in recriminations, absent sense of loss. Even now, the fists bud, flowers into trembling. The fingers trace each line and see the future then. Always. Nobody burns them. The darling letters, stiff in their cardboard coffins. Babykins. We all had strange names which make us blush, as though we'd murdered someone under an alias long ago. I'll die without you. Die. Once in a while, alone, we take them out to read again. The heart thudding like a spade on buried bones.
Everlasting Love Tomorrow and the last from Essential Poems, BBC Two at 7:30.
We're launching a nationwide search to find a poem for Britain. Could you write the New Jerusalem? If so, check out our website at bbc.co.uk/poetry, or you can write to us at BBC Poetry Competition, PO Box 38859, London W12 6WG.